This is lesson 2D, and we're going to learn all about how to do looping in Python. We'll learn about the for loop, which you use when you know how many times you want to execute a loop, and the while loop, which you use when you don't know how many times you're going to do it, and you have to wait for a specific condition. So we'll go through some PowerPoint slides that go over the syntax, and then we'll do a little bit of playing around in idle so that you can see how to put this into practice. So let's get started. We use a for loop when we want to execute a block of code a specific number of times. And the syntax is very simple. For, variable name, in, and then we give a range of values with a colon, just like we did for our if statements. Then we have a block of statements that are indented. The for and the in are keywords. You have to type those exactly as is. So the for statement has to end with the colon. The variable name can be a variable you've already defined, or it could be one that you haven't used yet. So it can be for I in a range of values, and you never used I before, and I will take on each of those values, one value at a time, for each execution of the statements in the loop. The range of values can be any Python expression that gives you a sequence of values. Now there's a lot of them that we have not yet learned, and in fact, in the beginning of our week 3 lessons, we're going to be spending a lot of time with lists, and lists are going to be a great way to get a range of values. For now, you can use the range keyword, which we'll explain on the next page, or you can say like for I in, and then put square bracket 1 comma 2 comma 3 comma 4 square bracket colon. We'll do a lot of examples in idle so that you can see what happens. There can be one or more statements in the block of code that's indented underneath the for statement. One or more, not zero. You have to have something there if you've put a for statement in there. They all need to be indented farther than the for statement and the same level as each other. This will happen for you automatically within idle. Now the range built-in class is something that builds you a list of numbers that follow a specific pattern, and that's usually what we're going to want to do in a for loop. The syntax is the keyword range, and then in parentheses you can have up to 3 numbers: start, stop, and step. The start is optional. If it's omitted, it has a value of 0. Stop is required. And step is optional. If it's omitted, it has a value of 1. Now, how does this work? Python will return all of the values beginning with the start number up to, but not including, the stop number, going up by whatever your increment is, whatever your step value is. So if you go range 1 comma 10, that'll give you the numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, up to, but not including, the 10. If you do range 1 comma 10 comma 2, it'll give you 1, 3, 5, 7, 9, up to, but not including the 10, with an increment of 2. And if you just go range 10, it'll give you 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You can also make the step negative instead of positive. If you do that, then it produces a list of numbers that begin with start, and they go down by whatever your step increment is, and they all have to be greater than, but not equal to, the stop value. Here's a bunch of examples. Range 3, that's the same as if we said 0, 1, 2. Range 0, 3, that's the same as if we said 0, 1, 2. Range 1 to 10 gives me the numbers 1 through 9. That's a tough thing to get used to in Python. Range of 1 to 10 does not give you the number 10. It goes up to, but not including a 10. Range 0, 15 by 3 gives me 0, 3, 6, 9, 12. Range 1, 1 gives me nothing. It would start at 1, but it's got to stop before it gets to 1. So if you have a for loop with that, it won't execute at all. Now let's try a couple with negative increments. 6, 0, negative 2 says start at 6, go down to 0, but not quite there. Go down 2, but don't include 0. So I get a 6, a 4, and a 2. If I go 6, negative 1, negative 2, I start at 6, go down by 2's, and stop before I get to negative 1. 6, 4, 2, and 0. Okay, a while loop is something that you're going to use when you want to execute a block of code, but you don't know how many times it needs to execute. So the syntax is just while, and you put a condition in, a condition just like you did in if statements. Anything that can evaluate to true or false. While x greater than 0. While name equals Mr. I. While weather equals cloudy, and so on. And then a block of statements. Just like with the for statement and with our if statements, the while statement has to end with a colon. The statements are executed repeatedly as long as the condition evaluates to true. This means that somewhere in the statements you'd better change some values of variables that make the condition not equal to true at some point. Otherwise you'll have an infinite loop. Here's an example of a while loop. X equals 2. While x is less than 100, print out the value of x, then multiply x by 2. So the first time through this loop, x is a 2. Is it less than 100? Yes, I'll print out a 2. Then I'll multiply x by 2. X is now a 4. Still less than 100, I'll print a 4. Next time through, x is an 8, then a 16, a 32, and a 64. Eventually, I get a value that's not less than 100, and I'll exit the loop. Here we are in the Python shell. I'm going to create a simple little module that shows you how to do some for loops, and then we'll execute it a few times. So I'll go into File, New File. That opens up the module editor, and I'm going to do, let's see, for x in. Simplest way to do this is I can give it, let's see, let's put a square bracket in, some values, 1, 3, 6, 16. Put my colon. Notice how it is indented for me already. I'm just going to print out a value of x so I can tell what's happening, and that's all I'm going to do. I'm going to save this. I will save this file in my week 2 folder. I'll call it for loops, and then I'll run it, either with run module or by pressing F5. Goes back to the shell, and it prints out the values 1, 3, 6, and 16. So let's go back to here. Notice how I had that in square brackets. I could put that in parentheses instead. It would work exactly the same way. So square brackets, parentheses. We're going to learn about what the difference is between those in week 3. For now, it's just some values. If I run this, first I'll save it, then I'll press F5 to run it. I'm going to get the 1, 3, 6, 16 also. So let's go back and do something a little bit different. Anything that can be a sequence of values I can use for my in. Well, instead of just a sequence of numbers, how about a string? That's a sequence of values. It's a sequence of H, E, L, L, and O. Save that, press F5 to run it, and I get each of those letters printed out one at a time. Kind of cool, huh? Can't do that with your other languages. Let's go back and start using the range. Let's just say for x in range 6. What do you think is going to get printed out here? Think about it. You got it? Do you think you know what's going to happen? All right, I'm going to save it and run it, see if it did what you thought. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Did you remember that it would start at 0, not at 1? And that it would go up to, but not including, the 6? If you did, great. You are now thinking like a Python person. Okay, let's go back to our module and do just a couple more. Let's go from -2 to 6. save it, run it. Starts exactly where I tell it, and it stops right before it gets to the end. And let's do one with a negative step value. So let's start at 6, go down to -2, and we'll do that by going down by -1 each time. So I'll save that and run it. Starts exactly where I tell it at 6, goes down 2 but not including a -2, and this time we're going down by -1. Now what's going to happen if I blow it and do something kind of stupid? Let's go into here and go from 6 to -2 by a +1. So 6 will get incremented by 1 each time. 6, 7, 8, 9. What's going to happen when I try this? Let's run it and see. It didn't do anything at all. Why didn't it do anything? Let's look at the code. It says start at 6. Am I less than -2? No, I'm not. I'm not less than -2. So it doesn't even execute once. Let's do a while loop. Let's say x equals 10, and let's do while x is less than 15. Print x, and then let's add 1 to x so that it'll change its value. What do you think is going to happen? X is going to start out at 10, so I'll print a 10. I'll add 1, I'll print an 11, a 12, a 13, a 14. Will I print the 15 or not? Let's see. Save it. Run it. No, I do 10, 11, 12, 13, and 14. Why is that? Because when x is 15, I will no longer satisfy the while condition. Now, suppose I forgot to put this statement in. While x is less than 15, print x, and I never change it. This is a danger. It's called an infinite loop, and let's see what happens when we run it. It prints an awful lot of 10s, and it never seems to stop. It's going to keep going forever and ever and ever, or until Python decides to quit, or until I press Control-C to abort it. You might want to remember that hotkey, Control-C, stops whatever program is running. Notice I got this keyboard interrupt. Okay, go have some fun on your own with for and while loops. You should be ready to take the Week 2 quiz and start your programming assignment. Happy programming.